The New Year's Eve turned out to be a horrible tragedy for the 13-year-old girl, and it changed her life forever. She fell into the hands of a kidnapper who tortured her for days on end, filming all of his depravities. This story shows us how an innocuous online conversation can lead to irreversible consequences that can shock the whole world. Alicia Kozakiewicz was born on March 23, 1988, in the American city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She had everything you could possibly dream of: loving parents, a caring older brother, and a bright, hopeful future. In 2001, when the girl was 13, her brother introduced her to the online world. Soon after, Alicia took an interest in online chats that allowed people from all over the world to talk to each other without any boundaries. She met a boy her own age on Yahoo and quickly developed a crush on him. They talked to each other all the time, did their homework together, and shared information about their lives. Alicia asked her new friend for advice, shared her worries, and sometimes complained about her parents. The boy cheered her up in any way he could, always supported her, and shared her interests. The computer the girl used to go on the internet was in the living room, which allowed the older members of Alicia's family to see what she was up to. To avoid supervision, she started talking on the chat at night when all her family members were already asleep. This continued for almost a year. Alicia was over the moon. She thought she found her soulmate. More often than not, the topic of their conversation started drifting towards the possibility of meeting in real life. Talking online wasn't enough anymore. That was the main problem. Alicia, being 13, couldn't tell her parents that she wanted to meet her online friend, and going to meet him without telling them would be almost impossible. Her friends suggested a perfect solution. He would get to her house on New Year's Eve, she'd sneak out of her house, and the couple would finally meet in real life. This plan was exactly what Alicia needed. What could be better than a romantic rendezvous on New Year's Eve? The celebratory dinner started on December 31, 2001, with all her family members present: her parents, grandmother, brother, and his girlfriend, their friends. Right before dessert, Alicia told her mother she wasn't feeling well and left the table. Her parents thought she'd go upstairs to her room for a while and then come back, but Alicia had other plans. The girl sneaked out of her house and ran along the street to meet her prince. She was contemplating at that moment why he wanted to meet her specifically on New Year's Eve. He most likely wanted to present her with this nice gift, she thought. She was running and imagining how their date was going to go. Her romantic mood soon gave way to slight anxiety. The girl was standing in the middle of a dark street with no one around. She realized at that moment just how dangerous and reckless it was to leave her house. Alicia decided to go back, turned around, but suddenly heard someone say her name. The girl decided it'd be silly to run away at that moment and walked towards her destiny. Everything was a blur after that. The girl found herself in a car, and a man she didn't know was driving her to an unknown destination. Fear was everything she could feel. She was scared to death. The bone-chilling fear was eating her alive. Alicia had the impression that all of this was just a movie scene, not her life. She saw his face only after 5 hours of driving. It was a grown man who didn't fit the description he gave her online, not even in the slightest. She couldn't wrap her head around the situation she was in. It seemed like it couldn't possibly get worse. Suddenly, he grabbed her by the arms, got her out of the car, threw her into his basement and chained her. He looked her in the eyes, gave her a malicious smile and said, "You're going to feel really bad now, so you can start crying." The next 4 days turned into a pure nightmare for the girl. The kidnapper assaulted her, tortured her and filmed everything he was doing. The videos were immediately shared online on sadist forums, and sometimes the man even brought his friends to his house and let them see Alicia. Her only dream at the time was to survive. On one of the days, the kidnapper told her he'd leave the house and get back in the evening. He added that he was falling in love with the girl, and Alicia realized that he was going to kill her that evening. In the meantime, the FBI did everything they could to find Alicia. At one point, they were contacted by an anonymous man from Florida who saw the video where the girl was being tortured. He got scared that he'd be jailed as an accomplice, so he decided to help the law enforcement authorities to figure out the location of the victim. To do this, he gave them the login the kidnapper used to post the videos. The FBI was soon able to find his IP address, and they traced the location of his house to Herndon, Virginia. A special ops unit was immediately dispatched to the location. Alicia got terrified after hearing noises and screams. She thought the kidnapper instructed someone to kill her. But after just a couple of seconds, the door swung open, and the girl was relieved to see FBI written on their clothes. The next couple of days, the poor girl was in total shock and could barely speak. First, she was brought to the hospital, then to the police station. She saw a dollhouse in the patient room where she stayed for her medical examination. She suddenly realized that even children much younger than her could become assault victims. Alicia felt at sea before seeing her parents. The girl thought she did something really bad and her family didn't love her anymore. She was obviously wrong. The reunion with her mom and dad became one of the happiest moments of her life. The kidnapper was arrested at his workplace in the next half an hour after the rescue of the girl. He turned out to be a 38-year-old man named Scott William Tyree. He was born in 1963, had a school education, and led a pretty boring life. He married twice. Both of his marriages ended in divorce. His first ex-wife described him as a classic software engineer who was interested in science fiction and computer games. He never had any problems with the law before getting arrested. But there's one extremely shocking detail in his biography. Tyree had a daughter from his second marriage who was only a year younger than Alicia. She was living with him during her winter break and left that same day her father went to pick up his victim. After the rescue, Alicia had to go through another serious ordeal, going to court. Despite the fact that the investigators had all the necessary evidence, the girl still had to relive all the horrendous things she went through. She had to watch the videos showing her being tortured and confirm that it was indeed her. Subjecting the girl's tender psyche to this ordeal was an extremely ill-advised decision on the court's part, but she agreed. In September 2003, the court issued the verdict. Tyree was sentenced to 19 years and 7 months of imprisonment. In February 2019, he was released on parole but was placed in house under constant surveillance. It caused an uproar in all of America. The penal system chose a house in the city of Pittsburgh where Alicia still had her residence. Regular people and even congressmen demanded the sadist be relocated to somewhere far from his victim. The problem solved itself, albeit temporarily. In October 2019, Tyree violated his parole and went to prison for 2 more years. If his sentence doesn't get reduced, he will be released only in 2021. As for Alicia, she kept thinking about that dollhouse from her patient room. She understood how dangerous the internet was for children, and at the age of 14, decided to dedicate her life to protecting them. This saved her in a way, because she was fighting for a good cause, and having a purpose allowed her to distract herself from her own tragedy that could break even the toughest people. Alicia is now 32 years old. She works as a lawyer and protects children who suffered at the hands of violent kidnappers. She also set up her own project that helps teenagers understand all the dangers of social media sites. Throughout her entire healing process, the girl was dealing with serious trust issues. Her childhood trauma almost killed her belief in love, sincerity, and genuine care. But Alicia, once again, was able to get through this thick barrier, and now she's happily married. Despite having a happy end, this story evokes mixed feelings. 2 decades passed since Alicia Kozakiewicz's tragic kidnapping, but the problem of children being vulnerable on the internet never went away. On the contrary, now it's more relevant than ever with the rapid evolution of our technologies. The internet gives people freedom, and everyone chooses how exactly to use that freedom. Governments of different countries adopt laws and impose restrictions that don't change the situation in the slightest. The story of a little girl from Pittsburgh is a bitter but necessary lesson for everyone regardless of their age. It could help children and their parents to avoid a similar tragedy the way Alicia herself helps people now.